am absolutely delighted to welcome Maartje from the Netherlands. Hopefully I've said that correctly.
You did, Nigel. Very good.
And how are things over there? Although you're not that far, it takes less than an hour in normal times.
In normal times, yes.
In normal times to fly over to you. But how are things in the Netherlands at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment it's pretty good, but of course we're still dealing with this coronavirus, and we have to be a little bit creative, like everybody has to be. But we're still healthy. Our family is healthy, and for us, that's the main important thing at the moment.
Exactly right. And for those that don't know who Maartje is, she is a behavioral therapist, a certified coach, a trainer, a body language expert. And obviously, I know she's going to do a very valuable contribution in our series. But perhaps, Maartje, why don't we start off as by way of a sort of an introduction? How did you start? How did you get involved in body language? It's a fascinating subject, and what I found is that lots of people have taken lots of different avenues to get to it. But what was yours?
Yeah. Well, it has been a long way. The funny part is I never really liked studying. My father was my principal, a headmaster, I think you say, or principal in English.
Exactly, yeah.
I started off as a teacher, and I was pretty rebellious, so I knew for sure I was never going to teach. Mm-hmm. And so I never really studied that much, but I got all my grades. And then after high school, I started university. First of all, international business. And then after 2 years, I switched to communications. And then one day I got this course in nonverbal communications. And I got so excited. I even called my dad, like, you can't believe it. I now got something in school that I love so much and that I can just practice now in everyday life, and I know what I'm studying. And even I think in that whole year, the school books that I had, I bought all of my friends for their birthday because I thought it was so interesting to read. Then I made some other career decisions, but then 20 years later, again, I got introduced to nonverbal communication. And then I just knew I have to do something with this because, here's this fire in me that now I study like every day. I can't stop absorbing information about body language.
A real passion.
Real passion, yes.
And I can understand why. It is, from a non-expert, it's it is fascinating, I guess there's also that sort of mystique that people have. That do you get that bit where as soon as you say to somebody that you've not met before that this is what you social this is what I do, they all suddenly go, oh,
yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Or they're like, okay, I just need to go to the toilet, and you never see them back, or they're very interesting to know, or interested to know more about the subject. Yes.
And where is it sort of taken? So what's been the sort of the field of expertise? Where have you applied it in the real world? Is it to education? Is it business? Where has that been?
Well, for me, I think it started with coaching. So I could use it in my practice to see true emotions, because of course it's difficult for people to, in like first or second session, show their true emotions. But for me, it was a good way to see what's truly happening beneath. So I concentrated a lot about in micro expressions.
Mm-hmm. Which are very valuable now, I guess, and
yes.
Especially as everything is going onto video at the moment, the interaction physically face to face with people has become much less common. So yeah. I would imagine that those sort of micro expressions are even more valuable now than they've ever been to try and work out that.
Absolutely, yes.
What do you think? What are the? If we take that scenario that we have so much that we talk about of people having interviews and what they're doing in this kind of format where they're on a video, first of all, let's take it from both sides. I'd be fascinated. A lot of the people who listen to this will be people going for a job, so they'll be the candidates.
Okay. The candidates. Yeah.
What advice would you have to them? To start off with, what should they be doing? What should they be looking out for? What should they what are the basics that they they shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, and I think from the perspective of nonverbal communication, like preparation, it's very important. Start with preparing yourself. What is the company I'm going to apply to? What is their culture? How do people dress over there? Because of course, clothing is also a way of nonverbal communication. Then try to make a video of yourself, see how you look on the screen. I think you should start with that. So preparation, very important. Then of course, try to look as comfortable and confident as possible on the screen. I think that is really important.
I think that element of practice is so important. I mean, I talk a lot about that in my book, Find a Job in a Pandemic, where it's there's almost a whole chapter is dedicated to the pursuit of practice, rehearse, and there's so many different examples of that. You wouldn't expect the top Hollywood movie actor, like whether it's Brad Pitt or Robert De Niro or anything else like that, just going off and taking the script and just going.
No,
they will
not.
have practiced and practiced and practiced before they do it to get that right. And these people are the best in the world at performing. And in some respects, it is a performance that we're doing. So and do you think that it's better for them to sort of record themselves and analyze that rather than the old traditional perform it in the mirror?
Well,
and do that?
I think if you have an interview like this, like we're talking now, I think it's good to record yourself. Just see, how do I look on the screen? What kind of surroundings do I have? What kind of message does that say? So I think it is important to just film yourself. It gives a little bit more pressure than practicing in front of the mirror. And of course, if you go for a job interview, you're nervous. Everybody's nervous. So I think a little bit extra pressure and recording yourself is already a good way to see, how do I react in more nervous situation.
And I think that constant practice really helps sort of eliminate, or not necessarily eliminate, but reduce that nerves. It gives you a bit more confidence that you do that. I think we all know those areas that the more proficient we are at something, because and through repetition, that you just keep repeating something, the less nerve you are. I mean, whether it's just simply, I mean, my little girl is starting to want to learn to ride a bike, for instance, and we all can remember that when you first start out, you are petrified. I mean, absolutely petrified as a small child that you're going to fall over, can't do it. We can all now, as grown adult, well, most of us can get on a bike now. You just ride it, because we've done it so many times, it's become easy. And I think in that respect, absolutely. Do you think then, let's say we have practiced a lot, what should they be looking at in the screen? So when we're looking at what we're doing, what are the sort of small micro characteristics that we should be looking at in those sort of behaviors? In other words, what are the tells that the interviewer is going to be looking at and inadvertently getting the wrong message?
There's a lot. I think. Well,
we're not going to cover them all. Just a few.
But we can walk them through slowly, maybe. But I think the first thing we talk about is so feeling confident. Not feeling confident shows in a certain self-soothing behavior, we call. So that's like I don't know, is everybody watching this, or are you also having people just listening to it? Because then I have to explain more what I'm doing.
No, they will be doing both. So yes, we're going to have, so it will go on the podcast, but obviously, so if you're listening on the podcast, yes, you're not going to be able to see what it is, but then you can go online and see in all its glory. You'll be able to see what the actual demonstration is.
Okay, so the self-soothing signals is that you can self-soothe. So you caress, for instance, your hand, or you caress your arm, or sometimes you see just people with their thumb caressing their hand. These are stress signals, self-soothing signals. Other stress signals are blocking behaviors. So that could be crossing your arms, which can also be a sign that you're comfortable. So you have to look at a wider perspective, but we can talk maybe about that a little bit more later on, how you analyze body language. But it could be that this is a blocking behavior, because crossing my arms and wanting to protect my vital organs that are in front of me in my stomach. But also blocking behaviors can be when people would be having an interview face-to-face and putting every stuff, because a lot of women do that, they have this purse and they put all the stuff out of their purse, like their sunglasses, they put their telephone in front of them, they put a glass in front of them, and just building like this big castle of objects just to block, to feel more safe. And you can watch and look for that. And I think a good recruiter wants his candidate or her candidate to be relaxed, because she wants to see the authentic person. So of course you can make them feel stressful, but I would recommend try to make them feel as comfortable as possible, because then you will see the true nature of this person, if this person will fit in your company. So what you can do is try them to open up more. So if they're crossing their arms and feeling uncomfortable, try to give them something to drink. They have to open up their arms to get that drink. Or maybe even take them for a walk to the coffee machine, so that they walk and open up their arms. They will definitely get more relaxed. So that's one thing for the recruiter I would definitely advise.
I think that's such good advice for the interviewer. Because there's that old school, isn't there, of the aggressive interviewer, the person who would, let's really go at them and we'll get the information out. And I think there's less of that nowadays. There is still examples of it, but I couldn't agree more. I think for an interviewer to really get to know and understand that character, the character and makeup of that individual candidate, making them feel relaxed is perhaps one of the most powerful tools that they could ever do. Because exactly that, when you go to interview, you are automatically defensive. You're blocking, you're worried, you're thinking, well, I don't want to show any weakness or any red flags to anybody. And it's, I think, incumbent on that interviewer to try and make that person as relaxed as possible, to bring all that guard down so you can really understand it. And there's some really good techniques there to do that. But then, having said that, the sort of, especially the wandering off to to go and get a drink before the interview happens, come with me, come and do that. And that can also be a time where you have to really blend that between the nervousness, the guard, and not letting your guard down too much in some respects. So if you become too relaxed, you can almost tip it the other way, where you show those signs of far too relaxed with it, and then that can be misread.
Do you think that will happen often, that people get too relaxed? No, I think they'll still be very nervous.
I've absolutely seen it. Yeah, I have. And it's and there's danger areas where you have the too relaxed bit. You can have the areas before and after the interview. So when you've not met the interviewer, the danger area is where you're going to reception, you're waiting, and yes, you might be a bit nervous, but you're not in full interview mode. There are a lot of organizations now that will get reports back from the receptionist from the areas that you're waiting, to find out how you behave. What do you do? How was that interaction?
Yes.
And that'll be part of the interview process without you knowing that. And then the real danger area is at the end, or in breaks, where you sort of relax. It's almost as if you say, right, we'll take a little break here, or yeah, that's been wonderful, great to see you. And then you start having a non-interview conversation. So you might talk about the football, or what did you do last weekend? Yes, I went to go and see the football as well. It was great. And then before you know it, you've gone from professional conversation, because you become too relaxed, you suddenly have the conversation you might have with someone down the pub. But
that could be really interesting as well, because that also says something, communicates something about this person. How does this person react when he's relaxed? How is this person with your customers? If he's a salesman and he feels relaxed, does he still remember that he's got a professional role.
Exactly right. And
Right.
and that is, so it's important for people to remember that. Again, I talk in the book about it, in that, there's some of the rules, there's some of the things you really shouldn't do, and one of those pitfalls is exactly that, where you go into that, and then if you never ever swear, for instance, where you're in that, even if you might do that when you're at home talking about the football, even if the interviewer starts saying that, just don't go down that route, because it's almost guaranteed failure when that happens.
I think as a body language expert, I do try to get them to a little bit like a more relaxed level to start to see their baseline. Because if you want to read body language or analyze body language, there are some rules you need to follow. And one of them is finding out what their baseline is. So when somebody feels really comfortable, what kind of posture or gestures does this person have? And then you start looking for context,
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So in what kind of environment is this person? What's the situation? Context can be the job interview. Of course, this person is more nervous than normal, probably. And then if you want to analyze, you want to cluster. That means that you are looking for signals more than one. We've talked earlier before about myth. There are, of course, a lot of myth in reading body language. And often we think, if we don't know much about body language, that if we recognize a sign, for instance, the touching the nose, oh, this person is lying. You can't read body language with just one sign. So we say one sign is no sign, two signs, well, could be something, but we don't know. From starting about 3, definitely 4 signs, then you have a cluster, and then you can start analyzing body language. And what we do then, we start to look for congruency. When something is incongruent, so when somebody says he's, for instance, very happy, but he looks really sad, of course, then it's interesting to ask some more questions, because it's not congruent.
That's really interesting, and it's interesting to see, especially for the untrained person, because because practically everybody that I ever get involved with, either, and certainly from a candidate point of view, it's rare that they've gone through body language training. So they rely on that sort of instinct, and also whatever they may have picked up in a book once, or they might have done a short course sort of 10
dangerous.
years ago. Yeah, which exactly, it's that, what's the phrase, a little knowledge is extremely dangerous.
Yes.
It's knowing a little bit too much of a bad thing, so you end up misreading everyone. And the examples I've got is quite often where you have people going to interview, and the candidate might turn around and say, oh, it was awful, it was just awful, he wasn't interested in me, wasn't looking, and then he just started firing loads of questions, and I know he didn't like me, it wasn't any good. And you think, oh, well, that didn't go very well. And then an hour later, you then get a debrief from the hiring manager who did the interview, and they said, best candidate I've seen. Yeah, I really like him. And they said that, a complete disconnect in that. And it's because they have done that. They've misread certain things that they've done. And whether it's also, you have to find that sometimes people will interview and will almost deliberately think, I don't want to give myself away, that I like this candidate. I don't want to do that because I want to see how they perform. So they sort of naturally are being slightly difficult, or asking lots of questions. But again, I think it's really good to say, if you is looking at numbers of different ones, because one particular behavior isn't going to be telling you anything.
And then again, I think I do understand you don't want to give away what you're feeling, but I think, if you want to communicate with a person and let this person be his or her authentic self, why not? Why not show and see? Communication is a sort of dance. You give something, you receive, and if somebody just doesn't make the moves, it makes somebody else very uncomfortable. And why do you want? I can understand, maybe if you're looking for somebody in like a very serious leadership's level, you want to see how they react to stress situations, you can do this.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't recommend this. You can use a lot of other signals. You can read signals. You can use your own signals, or body language. But if you do nothing, this will make anybody feel so uncomfortable.
Completely. And I'm really sort of interested also with that, sort of taking that theme on a little bit, that when you sort of know that you've started off badly. So we all know the expression, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Yeah.
And it is so true, and this is it's a sort of an ongoing theme that we always have here about how you try and create that first impression. But what I'm interested in is, what do you do as a candidate when you know you've not made a good first impression? You can tell that the person opposite you, the man or woman who's interviewing you, has clearly giving you the sign that, oh, I'm just not interested in this. You're not the right person, for whatever reason it might be. How do you then pull that back? Because the temptation for the candidate is to go into sort of panic mode, and then either oversell themselves or become defensive, or you just don't know what to do. But are there techniques that somebody could do in that situation?
Well, it's really hard, to be honest. Yeah, because like you said, that first impression is so important. And what you're talking about now, you get that halo effect. The brain starts cherry picking from this perspective, like, I don't like this person, he's not my friend. The reptilian brain says he's my enemy, so you're just looking for things that will prove your thought about this person. So you have to work extra hard to get out of that, and that's difficult. But the best way is to keep calm, because if you're nervous again, like your thinking brain gets into a sort of default mode, and speech will get harder. Your analyzing, thinking will get harder. So I think the only advice I can give is try to breathe, maybe have a drink, try to relax, and try to be yourself. But of course, if that first introduction doesn't go well, you need to work twice as hard. And but again, if that part goes good, then it works a different way, the other way around. Then you get that halo effect. Then we think this person is a friend, and we are going to see all the things that are good about this candidate. It's like reading like a horoscope. You just pick out the things that apply to you, and the rest you just don't see. So I think you can train yourself on how to make that very good first impression.
And and some of us, even though some of us instinctively, most of us can work that out, there's also quite a lot of us that don't see the signs. But what should you be looking at if you thinking that somebody's liking you? And this is, I suppose it works in every scenario, whether it's a business interview, going on a date, or any kind of interaction. How can you tell that? I mean, what are the sort of signals that you should be picking up on?
Well, first one is the Duchenne smile, the true smile. So it's not only the smile on your mouth, the mouth corners raising up, but you also see contraction on the upper side of your cheeks. So this goes up, and your eyebrows open up. They go up, and you see some claw feet on the side of your eyes, and that's a good sign, because then it's not just a social smile, but then it's like a truthful smile. So you can look for that. Another thing is that people do a head tilt. So if you tilt your head, you show a vulnerable space. I don't know the word, the veins here. What is the English word of the vein?
On your neck,
Yeah, you show the veins of your neck. So that's a very vulnerable part of your body. So it shows, the vulnerability. I'm receptive to, and I'm listening to you. So if you see somebody do this, instead of looking straight at you, it's very aggressive. So just a little head tilt is friendly. We even do that with babies. We try to we tilt our head, and they just start smiling because it feels comfortable. So if you see somebody do that, that's a good sign. Then you can look for mirroring.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the NLP technique. Tony Robbins talks a lot about that. So if you're interested in that, watch his TED Talks. For me as a Dutch person, it's a little bit over the top, but I think the theory that he also explains is quite interesting. And you see that with dating couples as well. For instance, I lived for a while in Amsterdam, next to a really nice French big cafe restaurant. And I often go there for a latte and my favorite scrambled eggs with truffle. And I just sit there and start like looking at people because, of course, I love to do this. And a lot of couples on their blind date go to this restaurant, and like in 5 minutes you find a couple like that, and I'm just watching. And what you see, if they're like feeling a connection, they will get in sync. It's like dancing with each other. For instance, one's leaned forward, the other as well. If you lean back, the other can lean back. If, for instance, you pick up your drink, the other one will pick up their drink. And then I just know, okay, you know, here's like a connection. But if like one goes forward and the other one backs off or starts blocking themselves, or for instance, for women touching their supranostril notch here, that's between the collarbones, that spot, they feel really, really uncomfortable, or touching their neck. A lot of men think, I don't know why, think that's flirting when a woman touches their neck, but it's not, you know, we feel really uncomfortable when we do that. So that are signs as well in dating, but you can also see that in an interview. You know, if you got the feeling you're getting in sync, that's a really good sign. And you can even try to do that, and be really careful with that. You know, don't copy behavior too much. But for instance, you can just try and lean back and see if the other leans back in a while as well.
I'm mindful. It's been a long time since I've ever gone dating. We've been married, fortunately, long enough. But you know, I'm sure there's probably lots of people now who are probably watching that and heard that, picked up that last bit and thought, "Good grief, there's quite a lot we're doing that." Maybe as a man,
we can make a new
I thought she really liked
podcast.
me.
We can make a whole new podcast about dating and
I think so as
nonverbal.
well. You know, that's a wow. I think most people probably would quite like that. But you know what? It's absolutely true, though. You know, there is that. You know, you highlight that part where people do completely misread it. You know, you mentioned about the women touching this and doing that men think that's flirting, and I'm sure that they do, but that's the extent of what happens, is that during an interview it's perhaps not as focused as it would be in a dating scenario, but it absolutely is. And there are so many situations where people completely misread it, and it's as I said, throughout my career in getting feedback from both candidates and from interviewers, not just the disconnect, but you know, the amount of times where they have clearly misread the other person, clearly misread it. And then sometimes what ends up happening is that they are misreading the person and then going down and changing the way that they present themselves to suit what they think is going, whether it's good or bad. And of course, it just makes it 10 times worse by doing that.
It's really funny because now you just opened your eyes. I see this micro expression. You talk about this person being stressed, you know, feeling fear. And while you say this, I see like this fear, micro expression of fear, even in your eyes. It's funny to see.
Well, we've all been there.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm not immune from it. You know, and part of my journey in doing this and coaching and writing my book and doing all of these different series is born out of many years ago, but going through interviews myself and having nightmare scenarios, misreading it, or making a bad mistake. So a lot of it is from that. And what I learned is that through it, that sort of came to the realization that, look, you know, it's not just that I need to send my CV off, turn up to interview, having done a little bit of research about the company and the person, and that's it. Yes, I'm good. I've been in sales, so therefore I must be able to do this. There's so much more, and there's so much more preparation. And because of the nature of it, of course, most of us never practice interviews because we don't have to. We're not going for a job every day, so we're not having to practice it. So often we don't have interviews or go through an interview process maybe once every 3, 5, 10 years. It can be a long time, and you forget that.
Yes.
And so that's sort of absolutely. A lot of it I feel from personal experience, and then seeing for myself every day people who have had really harrowing experiences, and sometimes they can be quite traumatic for individuals that they go through, and
Definitely.
it takes a long time to help them come out of it. Now, we talked about the pandemic and how difficult it is now, and obviously one of the real challenges that people are having and facing at the moment is that it's not just that they can go along and there's 3 other people for the job. That sometimes 300-400 people have applied for a role. So the competition is immense. So I think that what you're ending up having is companies, recruiters, hiring managers, interviewers are being really picky about who they take and who they select. So I think body language, especially at the moment, is something that is critical to that whole process of what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
Absolutely.
We talked about sort of the expressions they can do with it, but are there what do you do in scenarios where perhaps you're asked a difficult question? Because we could be prepared as much as you can do, but there still is those times where you're given a tricky question, one that you're not sure how to answer, you don't know how to answer. What do you do in that scenario? Because clearly you can demonstrate quite easily that sort of
Fear.
an absolute fear. How can you? I mean, should you be masking that, or should you acknowledge it? What's a good strategy to get through there?
Yeah, well, it depends. I think a large bit is also verbal. So maybe you have a good idea over this because you did this many times. I would think if you want to mask it, you can always see it. If this recruiter, this interviewer is good with nonverbals, he will see your fears. You will get more upset, more nervous, more stress. Eye blinking will get higher. Self-soothing, blocking behaviors, moving on your chair. He will see this. He will see the micro expressions of fear in your face. I would say just be honest and say, that's a good question. Can I think about it? Can I get back to you? Or you surprised me with this question. I haven't thought about that. Buy time. But then you get to the verbal point, and I think you're even better in that to give that answer than I do.
No, but I think you're right. I think that being honest with it, I think the advice to take from that is if you try and mask things, you are going down on very dangerous territory.
Yes.
As soon as you do that, because unless you are sort of almost a borderline psychopath, you're not going to be able to do it successfully enough.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that there are techniques from a verbal point of view you can do, and I've often helped candidates in that if you ever get into a trouble with a difficult question, what you need is you want to try and buy time so that you can think about it. You've got 2 different strategies. Either, as you said, you literally say, "Oh, that's a tricky question. Let me think about it." So you can do that, or and one of the most powerful techniques in interview is to use questioning yourself. So usually, the more you question, the more in control and the more power you have in negotiations. Generally, there's a technique that I help people with, which is called sort of verbal mirroring. Where you effectively repeat the last 3 words that somebody's just asked you. So if somebody's saying to you, "Tell me a time when you had a really, really difficult time in your sales career," and you just a difficult time in my sales career, it's natural that the other person will then give you more information. Yeah.
Time.
I mean, what I mean by that is, and then they'll start talking, and while of course they're doing that, you then suddenly have time to do that, and you can still get and the mirroring technique is one you really have to practice. And if you become really good at it, you don't have to just mirror the last 3 words. You can actually mirror words within the middle of the sentence, and it'll still be effective. But what it will do, as I say, that buys you a lot more time. And also what you should naturally, I would think, from a body language perspective, you suddenly should be a little looking more confident as you do that.
Yes, definitely.
So I think
I will write this down as well, because it's a good advice. Thank you as well.
I'll try it out. You can try it out. Unfortunately, my family are sort of know about my techniques.
Yeah.
I'm trialing things out.
Oh, that's Nigel again.
Yeah, exactly. My wife will say, "You can stop all of that with me. I know what you're doing." You know what I'm doing? Yeah, I do know what you're doing. And then you think, yes, I've still got to. So,
oh God.
So it is.
But Nigel, the funny thing is, and I think the people are listening should be aware of that, we tend to focus a lot on the content. So in schools, we learn to read, to write. It's all about content. And if you know that in so many studies, the result is that at least 60% of our communication is nonverbal. Why do we keep focusing only on that part of content? It doesn't matter maybe if you have the question wrong, it matters how do you look. There's so much more in a message than only words. And we always focus so much on those words.
And that is, I think, it's one of the most valuable tips I think you can give. And the interesting bit it makes me think is that when you talk about that time going to the French cafe and observing people, and we've all sort of done it. So some more than not. I'm probably a bit like you, that I quite enjoy people watching and trying to assess it. But again, I would sort of encourage people. I mean, I have the whole time always encouraged people to look at other people, try and read them, try and get into the habit of doing that. But because instinctively, in actual fact, as human beings, we're actually all probably quite good at it, but we've just forgotten how to do it. To the extent where I'm sure you've probably seen, where you can go along and sit in a restaurant and watch a couple, and you will know yourself without hearing a word they say whether they're getting on.
Of course,
you'll know that, and I'm sure that, again, we've all done that as we've been as couples or with friends, and you go, they're not getting along, are they?
Yeah.
Or cool, they really like each other. So you can instinctively read it in that if you want to, but you're sort of getting yourself attuned to do that. One of the other techniques I do, and I'd be interested to get your take on it, is watching famous people when they're interviewed. So whether it's famous politicians or actors, and trying to do it, because actors are, and especially as they're so well trained at it. What sort of have you got examples of that? I mean, what do you see on that? I mean, do you agree with me that it's probably quite a good idea if you're trying to get yourself up in business, in job interviews, to get on YouTube and start looking at some examples of interviews and how they portray themselves?
Absolutely. But like you said before, there are always everybody, that from politician to famous people, actors, they are very well trained. So it's a little bit harder to see their authentic self. But of course, there are movements, most of all the micro expressions. These are the muscle contractions of less than half a second that are involuntarily, for the people who are listening who don't know what micro expressions are, and you can't fake them. So the prolonged expressions in your face, of course, you can fake. I can put up a smile. A smile is a micro expression, so happiness. But if it's like less than half a second, it's like a true emotion that you just can't fake. It's there.
Yeah.
So if like an actor, if I'm watching, I try to really look good at the face. And, sometimes you see just the contractions of some muscles so slightly. And well, if they're not congruent with what they're saying, then it's starting to get really interesting. And then you start to look at their body, because if they're nervous, probably they're trained to sit relaxed, but somehow a part of the body, mostly the feet or something, you can't control everything. it will come out, and it can be in the face, mostly in the face, but it can be the feet, it can be the arm. You have to be a really, really, really good actor if you're really nervous, to not show that for a long period.
Yeah, exactly. And there's examples, I guess, of it in there. But it's interesting with that sort of the micro expression bit of how, again, getting people to sort of really start observing other people, and really, and I guess those actors who are very well trained to try and look at that and see if you can start attuning yourself to picking that up. What I'm also trying to help people is not just getting them away from making the basic errors, but also giving them an actual distinct advantage in an interview. If you're picking up those little micro expressions, and because you've practiced it and you've seen it, and you can start seeing it with the interviewers there, you think you'll know they like that. They like what I'm saying. I might bring that back in later. I might be able to expand on that particular area.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there's some really useful little techniques and tips there.
I think also for that micro expressions, there are maybe some expressions that are interesting for both sides, for candidate and recruiter to look for. For instance, you have 7 universal micro expressions. So they're around the world, they're the same. Even blind people, babies, they have these muscle contractions in the face of less than half a second. One of them, for instance, is disgust. Disgust shows with pulling up your nose, so you get a sort of bunny nose, and sometimes also the lip moves up. So think about now smelling something really disgusting, and probably, you see the nose starts to pull up. Let's say, for instance, the interviewer is reading your resume, and you see signs like that. It's not such a good sign. Of course, it's still one sign, but there are things you can look for. Another micro expression is contempt. So, for instance, if you try to negotiate a deal about the salary, for instance, and you see contempt, you see one corner of the mouth go up, so not a full smile, just one side, and like in just less than half a second. But if you just see that twitch, you can ask if you're doing a good deal. Probably not. Probably this person thinks, well, I having a good deal, but I'm laughing at you because you're doing me a good deal, but it's not a good deal for you.
And that's when you can help. And sorry to interrupt. I think that's definitely where you can then start helping with some of the verbal techniques that you can add into that. So, the techniques of, then questioning around there, and it's using expressions like, it feels like that could be a difficult deal. If it's too much, it feels like that's a high price product for you. So it's not a out and out question. You're showing empathy for it. It feels like, it seems like, it appears like. If you're using that because you've picked up on that, then they might be able to what they'll then start doing is expressing exactly what they're feeling, what they've just shown you, but they'll start be more likely to come out with it.
Yeah. Well, you also have, well, we speak now about the deal. Let's say you're negotiating the salary. I will show you. If you would say, okay, this is our final offer, and I'm showing now my hands are open, I'm showing you my hand palms, or I would say, well, Nigel, listen, this is our final offer. And now I'm putting my palms down. How does this feel? If I say, well, this is our final offer, or I say, Nigel, this is our final offer. Which one is our final offer?
Well, I would think your last one is that's it.
Yes.
Because you could see it was much more dominant. It was definite. That was almost inviting you to say,
okay, let's negotiate a little bit more. Yeah. There's still room if you want to. If you're a good negotiator, you can still try, but if somebody does this, you can pretty be sure this is it.
Yeah. Do you think they're still doing that in the Brexit negotiations?
Well, no, I think it's more this.
I think it's like that on both sides. Like that.
Yeah, it's done.
Just nobody wants to walk away. I think is what they've
Oh
got
God.
to do.
Yeah.
You see, what you should have. I don't know whether they would, but they should have somebody like yourself in there. Both teams should have someone like yourself there, sat there, supposedly to take notes to help out, but in actual fact, you're just analyzing the body language of the other people.
Well, like we said before, it's more than 60%. So you lose a lot of the message, the whole message, by not knowing what body language of non-verbal communication, because body language is just a part. Tone of voice, for instance, is also non-verbal. Look at Margaret Thatcher. In the 60s when she started, she had like this really high-pitched voice. She had a lot of voice training. Then she got this deeper, lower voice. That's very famous, of course. But yeah, a lower voice has more impact, is more confident, gives more trust, and higher not. You also see now still the young people, they go like up talking in the end. They end with a higher tone. So it looks like a question. It doesn't look confident, it looks if you're very insecure. These are things as well. It's also all nonverbal communication. How do you use your voice?
And it's interesting you talk about that bit where they go up at the end,
Yeah.
like that. And I think that's also that is contagious as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you are surrounded by people who do that, you end up picking it up.
Yeah.
You don't mean to, but you pick it up. And I couldn't agree more. It's perceived by people both deliberately and also instinctively as being weak,
Mm-hmm.
as you come across as weak and you're not confident.
Mm-hmm.
But the funny
Maybe
thing,
even not that intelligent, there
yeah,
are a lot of.
absolutely. And
Mm,
it's but we noticed that my stepdaughter came back from university and she'd started picking that up from there.
yeah, young
Um,
young people a lot. Yeah.
Exactly. And she's certainly not unintelligent. She's very, very bright. And we had a very sort of mild conversation with her. She suddenly stopped doing it already.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
But I think it is because of I think it's because of your environment,
Hmm.
for young people especially. It
Yeah.
is. But it brings up an interesting subject of, what do you do when you get to that end point of negotiation? So you've done well and you've done everything, and not all of them sometimes can be negotiations on Zoom. They
Hmm.
suddenly revert back to a telephone. So you're
Hmm.
back to just doing that. What can you pick? You talk about the Margaret Thatcher um, position with her voice, and absolutely how she deliberately toned it down. But can you pick things up from just voice? So if all you're at is just the voice side of it, again, what are the elements that people should sort of look at from that side? We've mentioned very briefly a couple of them, but how do you know whether you're doing well?
Well, if you smile, and that's the same, well, that goes for you, but also at the person on the other side of the phone call. If you're smiling, you will hear that. You will hear that in your voice. So I would suggest everybody, if your job interview starts with this first phone call, try to smile, because the other person will hear that. You will hear that in your voice that this person is smiling. So that's one thing. The lower voice, which we just talked about, very important. It makes you more serious. Calmness in your voice is important. Don't pitch up or start to talk really rapidly, because of course you hear nervousness in your voice then.
Yeah, I think it's so true. The smiling as well,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just do that as a practice of just talking without smiling and talking while smiling. Your whole everything about you changes as soon as you start
Yes.
smiling, and it absolutely does come across completely. That is I think a really good, powerful technique. What do you think about, I'm wondering how you could pick up, we talked about the negotiation bit of, that's my final offer and that's my
Mm-hmm.
final offer.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you can't see that, is there subtleties in voice when people are doing that sort of towards the end, where how much do you know when to negotiate? Because there's a real big question mark that people have of, a lot of people hate negotiating. They hate, they just think, oh, I don't want to do it, because in case they suddenly say no, which I always say, it's rare that somebody's going to offer you a position and offer that. And because you've said, actually, I'd quite like to see this, can we move a little bit on this? And can we help that? They're going to turn around and say, oh, actually, forget about it. We're not going to have you now. That's quite rare. Are there ways that you can pick up that this is the final one, or they are actually open to negotiate?
And you mean just by hearing their voice, not seeing their body anymore?
Exactly. So are there, in other words, is there things that you do from vocally, so from your voice, that I guess sort of mirrors what you would do with how you demonstrating? Because I suspect what most people do, I know I do, is when I'm on the phone, I will probably be demonstrating, doing things with my body, but obviously the other person can't pick that up. But I'm wondering whether that reflects a little bit in your voice, and whether there are signs that people can pick that up.
Well, I this is just guessing, to be honest, but I would guess it would be, if you just have no visuals, so just the voice, that it would be like a short, clear answer, and in a very like lowering voice. That's because that's like really a statement voice. It's a confident voice, you know. So if there's, that's what I would think, but I'm of course so much more focused on the whole body. But maybe you have ideas, because you did this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of mentioned a few of it with the tone of the voice. So I mean, it would be an extreme, but if you're having the going up at the end, and they might not do it quite so much, but it'll come across more of as a question. So, you know, we'd like to offer you this amount, you know, so as exactly, so there's a slight lift at the end. That means they're testing it. Yes, we'd like to offer you, but we're not sure you're going to take that. You know, that's that one. I think you can sort of practice it yourself, in that if I had only got £10 on my desk, and the most I can offer you is 10, I literally have no more money, I would say to you, I've only got £10. So I probably sound more different. Yeah, I'm more firm, I'm more straightforward. So you will, again, I think it's probably, as you talk about with those sort of micro expressions, there's a subtlety in it, but it's then getting yourself attuned to it, which I think sort of reflects a lot of what we've talked about today. And again, I'm a big advocate of just keep on observing things, of looking at scenarios. And it's, in some respects, it's sort of reflect what you like. So if you love sport, then go and watch some sports interviews. Go and see a football. If you like Ajax, I don't know why, but if you did like Ajax, then you would go and watch some interviews from the players. Go and see how they do, and try and start working that out, what they feel. Are they actually really happy about their performance? Is the coach, when he's saying, so like Arsenal, for instance, my son supports Arsenal, and they're not doing very well at the moment, so he's not very happy about it. But I noticed with the interviews that the coach, Mikel Arteta, is giving, and they're just doing really badly. They keep on losing, and obviously he must be under immense pressure. He must know his job's on the line. Arsenal's quite a big club. They shouldn't be near the relegation zone. They should be trying to be at the top of the league, and they just keep losing. And each time they asking him questions about it. And what I've noticed is that what he's saying is he's trying to put a positive spin on it. But I've been noticing the way that he is physically, and even though he's not giving too much away, you can see he's being slightly shifty. He's slightly moving his body slightly. You can see the way that his head's sort of going down a little bit.
So his baseline changes, what you say.
Yeah. If he just won the Champions League, he wouldn't be doing that. He would be confident, and he'd be happy and smiling, and he's not smiling, and you can just tell that he's not looking very confident in what it is. But I think what you can do is look at that and then listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
So listen how, so so what he's saying is different to what his body language is.
Yeah.
But if you then close your eyes, you could probably work from just hearing him.
Mm-hmm.
You could think, well, I don't think he believes what he's saying. When he's saying, oh, we're playing really well at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
we're just unlucky. I don't think he truly believes that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we're going to turn
probably the voice goes softer.
Yeah.
Also there you feel confident. If you feel confident, you speak louder, and you make this statement. And if not, probably the voice will soften more.
Yeah. So there are exactly that. There's those subtleties there. And I'm a great advocate in observing and watching and learning from others and trying to get yourself into that. I remember years ago, before I was ever in recruiting, that I quite enjoyed politics, and so I was involved in politics in the UK. And in order for me to try and help myself, I used to watch political interviewers, and then I would end up mimicking them to try and then I took it to another level of how would I answer those questions that the news reporter had just put the question to them. I would then in my mind answer it for it and then start doing it out loud while the interview was taking place. But it sort of helped me do that. So I would encourage us, wherever is your area that you like, whether it's sport or theatre or politics or current affair, whatever it is start looking at those areas, because I think you'll get yourself quite quickly attuned into it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you see things changing as we're going through? Because obviously, we're at some point we're going to be going back to normal again, and we're going to be physically seeing everybody and doing that. Do you think there's going to be things that people need to be aware of? What do you think that people should be looking at in the future? And I know that's sort of a bit of an open question, but the way that businesses are going to be looking at in the future of how do we get the right person, it's going to be a lot more pressure on people, even when they're starting to interview and actually take on lots of jobs. What do you think the areas there when you're sort of moving from video to back out into the real world again? What should people remember? I'm sort of going back to that first part of the meeting, when you first get there.
That first impression.
Yeah, the first impression. I think you're absolutely right when you talk about when you don't put all your stuff on the table and things like that. But I'm wondering about things like handshakes and all that. Yeah.
Well, like you said, yes, hands.
Shaking hands. This is the point.
Yes.
When was the last time we ever shook? I can't remember exactly. I can't remember the last time I shook someone's hand.
Yeah.
And we are inevitably going to go back to that.
Yeah, and luckily, because you can already make much up from a handshake. By giving a handshake, you can give an equal handshake, and that means that both hands are at equal level, or you can turn one hand down, so the one has the palm up and the other one down, or the other way. So I think in English you have the expression giving the upper hand, of having the upper hand.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you give a handshake and you turn the other person down and you have the upper hand, it means you're more dominant, you're in control. So if you have I see that a lot in my coaching practice. I always, the first thing I do is really focus on what kind of handshake do I get? Do I get like this really soft little handshake, just like almost the tip of the fingers, or do I get a firm handshake? Is this person turning my palm down? Then I think, okay, this is going to be interesting. This is a very dominant person. Maybe let's see what's going to happen. I think, for instance, back to my practice, it's really nice if you get that little loose hand in the beginning. And after like 8 sessions, in the end, you say goodbye, you get that firm hand. And I think, okay, mission accomplished. But so, yeah, that first handshake, that already says a lot. So try to think about pressure, just feel the pressure of the other person and don't give too much or don't give more pressure than the other person is doing. Try to give that equal hand. Use that smile. We talked over that the Duchenne smile. Just so not only a social smile, but also try to have that real smile that you will see your crop feed. And eyebrow lift is also something that's really important. It gives the feeling that of recognition. So if you see somebody, and let's say you see a stranger on the street and you just raise your eyebrows, this person thinks like, hey, do we know each other? Are we friends? So if you smile and you raise your eyebrows and you give that equal hand, your brain, or the brain of the other person, instinctively thinks, oh, we're friends. And that's what you want. You want to be in that friend zone, because then they start cherry picking from all these perfect things, qualities that you have. So I think those three things: the smile, the handshake, the eyebrow lift, try even the head tilt, that you're vulnerable, receptive, you're the listener, is so important, that first impression. But also close. That's the preparation again. I came from a large corporate banking environment, and I became COO of a tech company, educational tech company. So I was used to like wearing power suits or skirts and high heels. Well, you can imagine arriving in this tech hub, in these clothes, which I did the first week. Of course, you make an impression. Unfortunately, I wasn't so good in reading body language, and I didn't understand what kind of impression. But people knew who I was, but I wasn't approachable. So after a week, for then the next 2 years, I've just been wearing sneakers, and that was like liberating. But yeah, so also clothes, look into what kind of clothes, what do people in this company wear, it's all important, because if you wear not the right clothes, it also sends a wrong message. And yeah, that first impression can be really bad.
It's so true. The clothes, absolutely. Again, I mentioned that a lot in my book, in that how important that is to do your research, and it's sort of and the good thing is with YouTube now, and all different types of social media, Instagram, etc.
Instagram.
You can get a really good feel of what a company's culture is and how they dress. Now, I'm not suggesting that if they all go slopping around in shorts and sandals and a t-shirt, that you turn up the same way, because that's probably just a bit too far. But I always suggest is always go sort of one step. If they're really dressed down, go one step above, and then as soon as they get, so you're smart, but you're still casual, so they can still see you fitting in. In the same way, if you turn up in a suit to that kind of environment, they're immediately going to look and think, oh dear, yeah, you should be in a bank. And same the other way around. If you're going to a bank or professional services, they're probably all
your
going to
sneakers.
If you turn in with your sneakers, exactly, that is just not going to work. So do your homework. The old adage from before, which was go with your suit and go like that, is different now, because the world has changed and adapted slightly. But I think it's still important to do that. But then don't get up on it. I once had a candidate who asked me the question. I was working for a tech firm at the time, quite a fast growth, quite large tech firm. And he asked, what should I wear? And I said, look, it's a sales role. You should come in a suit. I said, even though it is dressed down, this is what they normally, but come in the suit. That's what they'll expect. They want to see you customer facing. He said, okay, yeah, fine, I'll do that. Anyway, he came along to interview, and he said, I got a message from downstairs that, the candidate, could you come and see the candidate? He wants to see you before he goes in. So, yeah, of course. So I went there to go and see him. I said, what's the problem? And he goes, I've got the wrong jacket on. I've made a terrible mistake. And what he'd done is that in his haste to leave, he'd gone into his cupboard, got it, but he'd actually got an evening dress suit. So he got a black tie suit. So it was all shiny. So it had that sort of shiny. So I actually noticed, to be honest, when I saw him, I thought, I said, to be honest, you can't really tell. But of course, as soon as you mentioned it, all you could do is look at this thing. And I said, fortunately, I said, you're at a company where just say it and use it as a funny anecdote, because they'll find it hilarious. They really will. And they did, and he did get the job, in actual fact. But it just shows that you can do, if you judge that and work out, that you do, even if you do make a slight error like that you're worried about, coming back and being honest and doing that, and making oh dear, you can't imagine what I've done. And
Humor.
exactly. Humor works
Yeah.
so well. It works
Mhm.
so well in those situations.
Always breaks the ice. I think that we should also mention in this row of things that makes a very good impression. Use a little bit of humor, definitely.
Yeah, I
And
think.
a lot of people also ask me like, yeah, but am I just playing a role? No, you always need to be authentic, but stretch it a little bit. Find like the balance between what do they expect from me and where do I still feel comfortable, and how far does this stretch goes? You still have to be you.
That's so important. I think
Yeah.
make sure you're still yourself, and
Mhm.
especially when you're doing all of this kind of work, because the temptation is to end up being someone else, and
Yeah.
that's not what you need to do. You
No,
need to
that will
come.
show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that will show also. Yeah.
It really will. So, Maartje, tell us a little bit about how people can find you. Who are your typical sort of customers? Who do you help out? And if people wanted to reach out to you, where would that be?
Well, you can always find me, but the internet page is in Dutch, so that's maybe difficult. But you can always find me on Instagram and follow me. I will soon start giving more English courses as well. But yeah, my English not like you here, not that perfect. So normally I focus more on the Dutch courses and clients that are so, like you said, it's so diverse. It can be lawyers, it can be real estate agencies, can be salespersons, it are coaches. You know, everybody communicates. It can even be you having problems finding your girlfriend. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I do trainings for large companies, but I also do webinars, and yeah, there's
Well, I
not
think
like one
we'll definitely
target
do.
group.
We've agreed we'll definitely do the next series on the dating.
Dating.
Yeah,
Oh yes.
that will take off. I think a lot of people want to know how to do that.
Yes,
Maartje, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
me
I
too.
think some really, really good tips there as well. I think that there is so much valuable content there for people.